it's good to see that in general, the MS community is very much aware of what we're doing. They're looking at what we're doing because it's really one of the very few late stage drugs and a drug that has a potential neuroprotective potential and a drug that might be applicable to both relapsing and progressive MS.
Hello, you're watching Proactive. I'm joined by Dr. Andreas Müchler. He's the Chief Medical Officer at Immunic Therapeutics. Andreas, very good to speak with you. Immunic had a strong presence at the 10th Annual Americas Committee for Treatment and Research in Multiple Sclerosis, or ACTRIMS, with a busy booth and 2 poster presentations. What were the key takeaways from the conference?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. I think we had a very strong presence there at the ACTRIMS Forum, and it's only the second time in the history of the company that we had a booth and a team there to engage with the MS community. And we use this as a good start for this year because this is an important year for the company, and also we have an important readout coming up, and we had 2 poster presentations there. And so in general, we saw a very strong engagement of the MS community, the physicians, but also the scientists that work in this area during our conference. And it sparked some really valuable discussions. And we had the feeling that the community is really looking forward to this year, especially to the CALLIPER readout of the study. But it really gave us a good way to stay engaged with the MS community.
Andreas, can you share more details from these poster presentations and what they mean for the MS community?
Yes, I'm happy to do so. So we had 2 poster presentations. So the first poster dealt with the baseline characteristics of different clinical trials in progressive MS. So this is important because we're reading out our progressive MS study, CALLIPER, very, very soon. And we know that some of the baseline characteristics of the previous progressive MS trials really look very different. And this has to do is that the differentiation between the relapsing and the progressive part of MS is not always very sharp or very distinct. And previous trials had different degrees of inflammatory activity in these progressive MS patients, which really influences the data from this trial, especially with the current drugs that are available in relapsing MS being used in progressive MS. And so we wanted to highlight the difference in these baseline characteristics and contrast this with our own baseline characteristics for the CALLIPER trial, which was designed to be a non-active, non-relapsing patient community, basically being something that has very little, if any, inflammatory activity. So I think this is important to really compare our CALLIPER data to previous progressive MS trial. Then we had a second poster presentation where we looked at additional preclinical data that is connected to our mechanism of action of Nurr1 activation, a potential neuroprotective target. So here we highlighted some additional preclinical experiments that show that this mechanism of action could be of very much importance for the progressive MS population because it targets activated microglia and also improves the survival of neurons in a neurotoxic environment. So this is something that I think highlights the mechanism of potential neuroprotection that our drug vidofludimus calcium has in progressive MS.
What feedback did you receive at ACTRIMS from the MS community, Andreas?
So what's really amazing that is we had, of course, very good traffic, but many people who came to our booth and who I interacted with or the team interacted with really said that they're watching us for quite a while. And they're really looking forward to the readout now in progressive MS. And it's good to see that in general, the MS community is very much aware of what we're doing. They're looking at what we're doing because it's really one of the very few late stage drugs and a drug that has a potential neuroprotective potential and a drug that might be applicable to both relapsing and progressive MS. And that's something I think that was very clear that the community is really looking for the data, and I think is very interested to see what comes out of this trial.
Andreas, you mentioned that big readout from the Caliper trial. That's coming in April, right?
That's correct. So that's not that far away. That's next month. Yes, we have this readout that we had completed the enrollment, the recruitment of the trial in 2023. We had to go through the follow-up period. Now I think we're at a time when we're very close to database lock and unblinding, and we're looking forward to the trial. It's very exciting because it's one of the key feature of this drug is that it has the potential of this neuroprotective effects, and these neuroprotective effects really would allow, we think, the drug to be effective in progressive MS patients that really don't have this inflammatory activity and which cannot be treated with the currently available drugs. So I think in a lot of ways, it's something that really will expand the treatment for progressive MS patients. And it is something that could be a scientific milestone, but more so, I think it can be hope for progressive MS patients that currently really have no good treatment options.
Andreas, I'm sure we're going to be chatting to you beforehand as that Caliper readout comes. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Steve. Good talking to you.
That's Dr. Andreas Michler. He's the Chief Medical Officer at Immunic Therapeutics.